with your Lamont Paris. You want to get this thing right. You got to put more money, I think, into building this program because look, you don't want to. I mean, like you might get outbid by other SEC teams for certain players you want,
Sure.
but you got to have more money to just bring in the wealth of talent, especially since you're having to bring in more players in general compared to last year where you only needed to bring in 3 transfers. You might need to end up bringing a few more.
Yeah, and as we get into this new era of revenue sharing, and again, there's so many specifics on that we don't even know about yet, but it sounds like South Carolina is positioning itself to be one of those programs that has the maximum of that $20.5 million, as Donati talked about the other day with Jay and Elijah, which would give you the idea that okay, because you have to segment it out for all the 4 sports that are going to get paid. It sounds like at least on that front, you're going to have enough resources available from at least the school paying the athletes to be able to maximize that. Now, again, the NIL component is a different part of that you're going to have to add on to the end. But from Denai's standpoint of what he can control with the school itself, it sounds like you're hopefully going to have enough resources from a basketball standpoint to be able to go out there and hopefully find those guys.
Oh, most definitely. And now here's the thing: more money, you might be able to get talented players like bigger names and stuff. That does not always mean it's going to translate over. Hence, look at this year for example. You got a guy from Alabama, Nick Pringle, Final Four guy. He's a pretty good player, right? He's had a decent year. It's just it hasn't been the best fit. So you got
Yeah.
to find guys that best fit your system. They might be more under the radar guys. Like how many people we're talking about. Not to keep bringing it up, but like a guy like Talon Cooper came from Minnesota
Mm-hmm.
and Morehead State. How many people were talking about that guy being the top player, to go get in the transfer world? Not many. So it's guys like that that you want to go find. Your BJ Max from Wofford and stuff
Yep.
that fit your system. You can find the best talented players out there, but if they don't fit your system, you're not going to be successful.
Yeah, we'll have plenty more basketball conversation a little bit later on the hour. Blake Lovell from Southeastern 16 is going to join us at 9:45, get his thoughts on what's going on with South Carolina basketball and also talk about what's going on around the SEC as well. Coming next, we'll dive into coaches around college football. Who are the best and how's the appropriate way to rank them? One expert at On3 put out a list the other day that's got some people talking. With that coming up next, again, we're broadcasting live here at Pro Swing in Forest Acres, 4708 Forest Drive, for their first annual Pro Swing Golf Classic. Going to be out here all day today as well as all day tomorrow. Hope to see plenty of you out here over the course over the next 2 days. It is the X Point Tyler Head and Jack Beltry on your Thursday here in the game. Hey, Tyler Head here once again telling you about our friends over at Canty Foundation Specialist. Got some rain moving in over the course of the next couple of days. And if you have an open crawl space around your home, after that rain moves through, you need to make sure that there is not standing water underneath your home in that crawl space because that can cause a whole mess of complications, can create mold and mildew, can invite tons of pests in like termites, things that you just don't want underneath your home. That's where our friends at Canty Foundation Specialist come in. If you go online to schedule an appointment at cantycanfix.com, they will send a professional to your home to evaluate what's going on with your crawl space or your home's foundation and make sure they fix it right so you and your family can live without worry going forward. Again, go online to schedule an appointment today at cantycanfix.com for our friends over at Canty Foundation Specialist. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry along with you, hanging out here at Pro Swing on Forest Drive out in Forest Acres for the first annual Pro Swing Golf Classic. Again, going to be out here all day long. Hope to see plenty of you here over the course of the next couple of days. We've officially hit the college football off season. It's going to be a long, cold off season until we play football again 200 some odd days from now. At least you get spring ball coming up in a couple months. That's a little reprieve. We'll get, media days coming up in the summer and all that kind of stuff. So you got things segmented throughout the off season to keep us engaged. But for now, obviously, not a whole lot going on. Transfer portal has pretty much slowed to a halt until we get a little bit later on into the spring. So this is the time where lists get thrown out for things. We talked about yesterday the top 100 games from this past year, according to Bill Connolly of ESPN. And yesterday, Terry and I talked about this a little bit. JD Pickell of On3 put out his list of top 10 coaches in college football. And when you look at a list like this, the criteria is varying, right? I don't know if he's going for where these coaches are at with their programs right now, if it's a list of all their accolades and what they've done up to this point. But these kind of lists always stir up controversy, and this one is no different. Look, at the top, you got Kirby Smart, 2 national championships, makes a lot of sense. Ryan Day coming off of a national championship with Ohio State, obviously. But as you get later down the list, Sarkisian at 3, Kalen DeBoer at 4, Dan Lanning at 5. Like, this is where things get a little bit murky in terms of the best coaches in college football as of right now.
Yeah, this list is it's interesting. It's interesting. I don't disagree with Kirby being at number 1. He's obviously, I think, with Nick Saban no longer in the game, which, gosh, still crazy to say at this point, Kirby is that new face of college football coaching, in my opinion. And so that makes sense. Ryan Day at 2. He's done a great job at Ohio State. Got to put him there. Steve Sarkisian, I agree with that. I don't agree with Kalen DeBoer at number 4. Like, I don't think he's done a great job at Alabama so far. I know it's only been 1 year, but I mean the drop off. I mean it's hard to compete with Saban, but
yeah,
still.
I think you have to give him credit for the fact that he did go to a national championship game a year ago with a under talented Washington team compared to the other teams in that playoff. But yeah, taking over to Alabama, still with a wealth of talent in that locker room, they underperformed. And the games that they lost, particularly the Oklahoma game and the loss to Vanderbilt, were very bad losses at the end of the day. So that dings him in my eyes. Again, if we're kind of looking at this from a where you're at right now, what have you done for me lately kind of thing. And I go about a little bit lower on the list with a guy like Dabo Swinney. Again, is Clemson where it was a couple years ago? It's not. They did make the playoff. They did win the ACC. You got to give them credit for that. I think having a coach, considering the fact there's only 3 active coaches with national championships right now, for one of them that has 2 of them to be 7th on this list does feel a little bit low.
And here's the thing with Dabo, and I know Carolina fans are not going to like to hear this. Like, Dabo's a great coach. Like, there's no denying it. Like, where Clemson was, when he started out that way to now, I mean, it's impressive. And look, the drop off. There's been a little bit of drop off, I think, since they won those national championships. And NIL has changed everything. The transfer portal's heated up and all that. But Dabo's still got 2 rings, and also, even when we want to like count Clemson out, like when we think Clemson's just not going to have a good year, whatever, they still find a way. And I know they're in the ACC, and that's the talk that they're on the terrible conference and all that. They still end up usually coming out on top more times than not, and they're always consistent. And that's what you want with a head coach. Like, I can't remember Clemson having a really, really bad season as of late. They made the playoff this year, won 10 games. So they've had some good years. And with Dabo, I think you got to put him up higher in this list. I put him over DeBoer. And I think do we base this more off of, that's the thing with the criteria. Do we base this more off of what you've done for me lately or what you've done in general? Like, that's, if we're doing just in general overall, then why isn't Dabo right up there with a guy like Kirby Smart?
I think you have to balance it because, yes, where you currently sit as of right now is important, but you can't ignore what your past accomplishments were either. And that kind of brings me to something I want to talk about here because Ryan Day is sitting at number 2. Of course, the most recent success of winning a national championship just a little over a week ago. do we view Ryan Day any differently now that he's won a national championship? Because I think about it like this: okay, let's go with Dabo Sweeney, who again took over a Clemson program that had not done anything in a very long time, finally got them to being a national championship caliber team, finally got over the hump and won the national championships of those couple times. In those years. Now it's been what 6-7 years since that happened, but still he got them there, and that was an accomplishment. Kirby Smart took a Georgia team that was perennially a 9 to 10 win team with Coach Rick and got them over the hump to start winning national championships again for the first time since the 1980s. Ohio State has always kind of been a national championship level program. Jim Tressel won in the early 2000s, in the mid 2000s. Obviously, Urban Meyer won just over 10 years ago. Ryan Day took over a very talented Ohio State program and finally won a national championship with them. But I don't know if that really changes our thoughts about him, because that's kind of what you're expected to do there, right?
Keep in mind, though, it had been 10 years since Ohio State had won a national championship, so we do have to keep that in mind. And I think Ryan Day has done a great job there. Like, outside of winning a national championship, and the one knock against him is, this dude can't beat Michigan. Well, I mean, Jim Harbaugh couldn't beat Ohio State for the longest time, and then eventually he did, and they won a national championship in his final year before going to the Chargers. So it's the same thing here, but Ryan Day's his record is tremendous at Ohio State. Like, I mean, the guy does not lose many games there, and if he does, I mean, a few of them will come to Michigan. But I think Ryan Day is definitely a guy that is a good coach. He obviously proved that this year, going on the run. And think about it, he won the national championship the hard way, losing to Michigan, and then winning 4 straight games to win it all. So that's something that no one's done to this point, and he's the first to do it.
Yeah, but again, that's what you're supposed to do there. And when you take over as talented of a program as he did from Urban Meyer, the fact that it's taken him this long to get here, I think is kind of a knock on him, right?
But these are his, like, I get what you're saying. Yes,
yeah.
It's a little bit of a knock, but these are his players. Like, think about it with Urban Meyer. Like, he left Florida to go to Ohio State, and what? It was like year.
Well, he had the little period of time off for his health reasons, and then went to Ohio State.
But I mean, what year was that in his tenure? It was like what, year 3 when he won?
He took over in 2012. So yeah, year number 3.
Yeah, okay. So Ryan Day.
Now he did have them undefeated in year number 1, but they weren't eligible for the postseason.
Yeah, I do remember that. But look, I think, yes, it's taken some time, but it's not like these are Urban's players that he still has around. Like, these are all his players and stuff, and he's doing a great job, I think. So, look, it took some time, but hey, a national championship's a national championship. But yeah, being number 2 on this list, I feel like that's some recency bias. But
yeah, and look, again, he's took over a program that was already at the national championship level. And again, compared to like Kirby and Dabo, they took over programs that were either good or average and elevated them. So I don't really know if Ryan Day elevated Ohio State. I just think, again, he kind of did what you expect a Ohio State coach to do, and probably took a lot longer than most people thought it was going to take to get there.
Oh, I agree. Now, one coach on this list that I'm not saying he's a bad coach by any means. I don't think he's a bad coach at all. But Brian Kelly being on this list, I mean...
Now we have to give Kelly credit for making a national championship and making the playoff before Notre Dame. So there is that. But where LSU sits right now, drastically underperforming.
Mm-hmm. I mean, what is this dude? What has he actually won? We're not going to count Division II championships that he's got and all this stuff, and one SEC West title. I mean, seriously, what has Brian Kelly won outside of losing a lot in CFP games or New Year's Six Bowls when he was at Notre Dame and the national championship in 12? And then at LSU, they made the SEC title game against
in year 1.
In year 1, which is in the loaded SEC West that it was back then with Saban still around, pretty remarkable. However, the last 2 years I feel like just haven't been. You had a Heisman Trophy winner, and you didn't even make the playoff 2 years ago, and then this season with a pretty good LSU team, I think, all things considered, you made it to the Texas Bowl. Are we really doing that? Like,
year number 4 is going to be very critical for Brian Kelly in terms of having to prove something, definitely, and we'll see what he's able to do with that coming up this fall. Again, broadcasting live here at Pro Swing in Forest Acres, 4708 Forest Drive. Tyler and Jack, it's the Extra Point. Coming up next, the NBA shortening games. Is this a trend that all sports are trying to follow, and should they be? We'll discuss that coming up next. It is the Extra Point here on your Thursday on the Game.
What's going on, guys? It's Jack here. Are you tired of the freezing cold and ready for the Columbia heat to be back? Well, it's starting to warm up a little bit, but we still got a long ways to go until it starts feeling like summer out here. But that is why you should go to AAA. Here's some great news. You can buy a new unit today, and there's no payments or interest for 12 months. In addition to that, there is pricing transparency, $1,500 buyback instant rebate, 15 years parts and labor transferable warranty, also 0% interest for qualified buyers, guaranteed financing as well. You can call AAA like I did, 803-677-1500. Again, that is 803-677-1500. You can tell them that you heard about AAA on 107.5, The Game.
Well, I mean, I don't. I'd have to watch the tape, but I mean, it's probably
That's
It's
Coach
probably
Paris. That's not
happening in
today's list.
conjunction with turnovers at that time and not getting shots.
Something else that I'm a fan of, and I'm probably in a minority, as we get more involved in global basketball, the NBA is the only league that plays 48 minutes. And I am a fan of 4 10-minute quarters. I'm not sure that many others are. I mean, putting aside what it means for records and things like that, I think that a 2-hour format for a game is more consistent with sort of modern television habits. I don't think people in arenas aren't asking us to shorten the game, but I think as a television program, being 2 hours, that's Olympic basketball is 2 hours. College basketball, of course, is.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Points Hour and Jack Welch again, broadcasting live here at Pro Swing in Forest Drive for the first annual Pro Swing Golf Classic. Get back to the basketball conversation. We'll talk to Blake Level from Southeastern 16 coming up here in a couple minutes. But that was the voice of NBA Commissioner Adam Silver on the Dan Patrick Show yesterday, and talk about a number of things, but in the particular clip there, talking about his thoughts on potentially shortening games in the NBA. This is something that's been floated out there for a long time. And look, he even said right there, he knows that not a lot of people are in favor of it, but the NBA is kind of facing a little bit of a crisis. And we don't talk about it a lot on here, but it's no secret. The ratings are down. People don't have the same interest in the NBA that they once did. But I feel like every time I hear the NBA is trying to change something, trying to fix things, they're usually doing the wrong things or addressing things that don't necessarily need to be fixed. And when I look at the potential of something like that, shortening the games from 12-minute quarters to 10-minute quarters, it's like, is that really going to fix the issues and suddenly bring a lot of people back to your product? Like, I get what he's saying, but I don't think that fixes your problem.
Does not fix your problem at all. And I'll give Adam Silver and the NBA some credit trying to, because the big issue for the last few years, I think it's such a turnoff for the common folk fans, like myself too, that just don't care about the NBA as much as people used to, is getting players to play more, right? Because the issue has been they're always sitting out and stuff. That is where the issue is, in my opinion. They've done a good job of trying to fix that with, you can't be in any awards if you don't play a certain amount of games and stuff and all that, and trying to force players to play more. But the whole bringing the quarters down to 10 minutes, what is that going to do? 2 less minutes? You're already there for 2 hours. So
yeah. And as he said, the time frame there is more conductive to a TV audience. And, you can look up some of the metrics on what, keeps people engaged and stuff like that. But my thing is, if you're entertained, you're going to stay and watch whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like true basketball fans, if you're entertaining them with a good basketball product, they're going to want to stick around and watch it, whether that game takes 2 hours, 2.5 hours, or 3 hours, whatever it may be. And like you said, there are so many things that are problems with the NBA right now. You have load management. You have stars that don't want to play. You have a game that is so predicated on shooting 3-pointers. It's taken away the magic of it. It used to be shooting 3-pointers was not a rare thing, but it wasn't what everybody did. So when you had the ability to do that, when you had good 3-point shooters, that was a rare thing, and it became a special moment. Now you watch an NBA game, these guys are pulling up with 20 seconds left on the shot clock and just going 3 after 3 after 3 after 3. And certainly there are teams that are good at it. And when you've got 2 good 3-point shooting teams, that can be exciting, but that's not the consistent thing across the league. But again, the metrics, the numbers tell you that's the most effective way to play basketball now.
One of the things that I hear, specifically older people that maybe watched in like the 80s and 90s, like my dad, for instance, like it's just there's no defense anymore is what the common perception is, and that all these guys do is take 3-pointers and stuff, and you can thank Steph Curry for that and all this. But look, it goes beyond that. The other issues are, players are they always want to take the easy way out, leave teams. Like look at Jimmy Butler in the Heat right now, wanting to leave right now, and you got players demanding trades and kind of being prima donnas, if you will. That's the real issue here. And then you got the NBA turning people off, with some things that they do and whatnot. And then also you got just in general the there's no continuity in the league, right? Like
yeah,
you got like LeBron, you got Curry, you got your big names, KD. But look how many different teams these guys have been on and stuff, and it's just like it's not
Well,
what it used to be, I guess.
And the NBA is also a star-driven league.
Yes.
Like, look, the NFL is going to be successful no matter who the players are because we associate more with the team itself. Sure, you can be a fan of Patrick Mahomes and follow his career and stuff like that, but more often than not, people are fans of teams as opposed to specific players. NBA is different. You have people that are specifically LeBron fans. They're going to follow him wherever he goes. People that are specifically Steph Curry fans don't necessarily care about the Warriors. They just like Steph Curry. But these guys, these superstars of the league, they're getting older. You know, again, LeBron, he's still playing great basketball, but how much longer is he going to be around? Steph, KD, you know, got guys like that. They're coming to the ends of their career. And yeah, you have budding stars like an Anthony Edwards, like a Luka, but I don't know if they're going to be on the same level as those guys. And are they going to be popular enough to be able to carry the league going forward when these other guys retire?
And that's a great point. And you know, it makes you wonder how much with the not just the TV ratings, but how much does the support like how many people are going to show up at games? You know, you see a lot of people show up at games primarily because they're a big fan of a certain player, like your
Sure.
LeBrons, your KDs, your Stephs, and that's why they're there. When those players aren't there, and I think you do have certain players that are going to be the faces of your league, like your Luka Doncic's, your Victor Wembanyama's. That's a fun player to watch right there.
Yep.
Your Anthony Edwards, players like that. But it's not the same as KD, LeBron, Steph, Chris Paul, players like that. It's so different, and I just wonder how much of a drop off there will be because we know there's going to be one. Just depends how much there is.
Yeah, the league definitely needs to figure some things out. Again, that wasn't Adam Silver saying they're going to make that change, but it's something that's he's a fan of, which when you're the commissioner of the league and you're a fan of something, you can make those kind of changes happen. And we'll see if the NBA does ultimately decide to do that at any point in the near future. And if that does help anything, which I don't think that it will. Coming up next, wrap up hour number one of the X Point. Going to be talking to Blake Lovell of Southeastern 16. Get his thoughts on the Gamecock basketball team and what's happening around the SEC as well. Again, we're hanging out here at Pro Swing on Forest Drive, 4708 Forest Drive. Come by and see us. Even if you're not a part of the tournament, our guy Josh is here with tickets for women's basketball on Sunday against Auburn, where they're going to be retiring Asia Wilson's jersey. So you can come by and just claim those tickets if you want to. If you come by and have the time to come by in and ask for those tickets if you have the opportunity to do so. Again, broadcasting all day long here with the 107.5 Game crew at Pro Swing on Forest Drive. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyra and Jack Felcher hanging out at Pro Swing here on Forest Drive in Forest Acres, getting you out here all day long. Hopefully you come by and see us. Talking a little bit more basketball, focusing back in on South Carolina and the SEC. Welcome in on the Love Chevrolet phone line from Southeastern 16, friend of the program, Blake Lovell. Blake, first of all, appreciate your time as always. Last time we talked was back in the preseason. I don't know where you had your expectations for the South Carolina men's program, but I don't think anybody saw 0-8 coming at the end of January. In your opinion, from your vantage point, how have you seen all this go down?
Yeah, I mean, I think, certainly it's just kind of one of those things where it happens to be in a year where the SEC is as strong as it's ever been. I mean, quite honestly, maybe the strongest conference we've ever seen. And I think, when you're a team like South Carolina, who was probably going to have, a tough time certainly replicating what they did last year. But, you're also going to look at the roster and say, all right, you compare the roster fully to everyone else. And not as though you didn't think they could win games. You just thought, okay, it's probably going to be hard to compete again at the top of the league. But then you just see how every other team is playing this season. You kind of see how pretty much everything is working for 14, 13 other teams in the league right now. And it's just tough because you feel like you're okay. Maybe we're a player away from winning some of these games. I mean, and I've said this in the past couple of days. If you play the games over again, the 4 games where they lose 66-63, 66-63, 70-69, 65-60, you play those over again, they're going to win a couple of those just based on, luck. A couple bounces go your way, you're going to win a couple of those games. But it's like also, if you just have one other player that, and maybe it is at the guard position, I know it's been a lot of the discussion, that's the difference this year. And it's the difference for LSU too. It's the difference maybe for Arkansas too. And so it's just kind of been one of those seasons where no matter how good you play sometimes, when you have a league like this, you're just not going to win a lot of games.
Blake, it's Jack. Thanks for joining us, man. When you mentioned me maybe needing one more player or whatever, when you look at this team and the struggles they have, do you think it ultimately, what is your opinion? Does it come down to the fact of South Carolina, maybe the evaluation of certain players just not being on the mark like it was last year, or is it something else in your opinion that's kind of resulted in the struggles in SEC play?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always tough because obviously it's a team that was built differently, and I think that's where last year we kind of, as the season started to go along, we were like, what, we should have solved some of this. Now, we couldn't have seen the fact that they were going to be in the SEC title race, in the final week of the season. We couldn't have seen that before the season last year. I just think that would have been, the absolute best case scenario. And even then, I don't know how many people would have made that argument. But now when you kind of look at the way this roster has been constructed, it's different than the one last year. And I think, sometimes too, and this kind of plays into it is, Jamari Thomas doesn't play for that 4-game stretch. And I'm pretty confident that if he plays, in all those games, they're winning at least a couple of them. And, it is, and how different maybe is the conversation right now if they just won 2 of those. Now, they'd still, have a record in the SEC that would be 2-6. But, hey, I mean, that's something in a year like this where at least you probably still have some hope that, all right, if we can just find a way to get some wins, maybe we get to 7, maybe we get to 8. That probably gets us to the NCAA tournament. But now it just feels so far away. So I don't know necessarily that it's just simply an evaluation thing. Sure, you could maybe say that in a couple instances, but I do feel like it's more of just the overall landscape of not just South Carolina, but I really think it is putting it just within the context of what they're having to face this year. And it's just somebody in this league this season was always going to sort of be left behind. When you have a league that, again, statistically is as good as any league ever. And again, maybe it is just kind of the difference of if you get one more of those guys via transfer or whatever, that makes the difference, because I still don't feel like they're just so far off to where they just can't turn this around and win some games the rest of the season. But it's also a mental thing, right? When you get to 0-8, at some point you're just like, man, what do we do? So.
Couple more minutes here with Blake Lovell of Southeastern 16. Let's kind of expand out to the rest of the conference. Auburn obviously playing the best basketball in the SEC as of right now. The knock on Bruce Pearl these past couple of years is not being able to go on deep tournament runs and get past that second round. Is this team built and finally ready to get them a little bit deeper in the tournament this year?
Yeah, you would think so. This is certainly one of the best teams he's ever had. And, the knock too on them was that they just weren't good in games away from Neville Arena. And I mean, look how many games they've won away from that building this year, not just winning games, but winning games against great competition. And that has been a big part of this too. I mean, really, they've beaten Houston, they've beaten Iowa State, North Carolina, Memphis, Ohio State, Purdue, Texas. They've beaten all these teams away from home. And, that was something I think you could sort of knock them for. Even in some of those best teams he had, sometimes that was kind of an issue. So what Auburn's doing is just they're as good as we've seen in terms of a top team in this league in a while, just based on how dominant they've been. They played, probably the number 2 toughest schedule in the country. Alabama's probably number 1. Or you could, flip the order if you wanted to. But I just think with the roster they have, lots of experience. They got the best player in the country in Janai Broom. And, they've got a star freshman in Pettiford, and then all the other guys who are just doing their thing. They're so good offensively. We don't even talk enough about what they do defensively, because it's easy just to focus on the offense because it's been historically good. But yeah, I think this is a season where Final Four isn't your goal if you're Auburn. Like, winning the whole thing is your goal, because I think right now, in my opinion, they'd be the favorite, just because I think they're a more complete team to me than Duke or Iowa State or Houston or any teams like that. So yeah, I think that's the clear goal now for Auburn.
Blake, about 60 more seconds here with you. Saturday night, John Calipari's Arkansas team goes back to Rupp Arena. What's the reception going to be like for him?
Yeah, I think it may be a little bit mixed. Obviously once the game starts, it will not be mixed, but it's going to be interesting, because for all the things Kentucky fans were saying towards the end of his tenure, look, there were still a lot of good things that happened while he was there, and he certainly kept the program at a certain level until, they started just to not have that NCAA tournament success. So I think he'll get a decent reaction, because also too, Kentucky fans, what's the point of even booing the guy when you look at, it'd be different if he was like 19-0 right now, right? But he's bringing an Arkansas team that's 1-6 in the league. They're completely down in the dumps. That they kind of have no way out seemingly to turn this thing around. And so maybe you get a little bit of that. I think Kentucky fans should be happy with their coach, and Mark Pope. He's been fantastic. So it will be quite a reaction, though, for sure.
Blake, appreciate your time as always. May check in with you a little bit later on in the season as we get closer to the NCAA tournament, but appreciate your insight as always.
Thanks, guys.
Again, Blake Level from Southeastern 16. That'll do for today's edition of the Extra Point. Coming up next, it is the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Case and Henry, Gamecock football sitting down with Wes Mitchell. Coming up next here on your Thursday out at Pro Swing on Forest Drive all day long here on the game. Oh, Tyler Ed here once again telling you about our friends over at Twin Peaks. Do you consider yourself to be a bourbon connoisseur? Well, at Twin Peaks, they are proud to offer an exclusive and extensive collection of some incredibly rare bourbons, whiskeys, and tequilas. Plus, you can check out their Bear Selects that are handpicked by their team and bottled just for you. But it doesn't just stop there. I tell you about it all the time. Their 29-degree draft beers, always on tap and ready to go to pair with a delicious burger, wings, whatever you can imagine, whatever your heart desires food-wise, they've got it as well. And, of course, TVs as far as the eyes can see. We're getting towards the ends of football season, but basketball's in full swing. Baseball's right around the corner, and there's no better place to take in all that amazing sports action with great food and great beverages than with our friends over at Twin Peaks right down the street in the Vista.
and then roll into weights. We do about 45 minutes of warming up, which is Coach Day doesn't like to call it warming up, but that's what it is. Warming up and doing speed work and drill work and stuff like that. Then we get in the weight room, hit the weights for about an hour and a half, something like that. Then get done, and we'll have, as an offensive line, we'll have meetings after with our GAs. So we'll go over fundamentals and stuff right now because the coaches are out on the road recruiting right now. They have been for the first couple weeks in winter. So we're with GAs so far. And then we'll start football Fridays this week where we'll go out and do some drill work together with the GAs and stuff on the field. So get to mesh a little bit better with the new guys this Friday and Fridays going forward.
Yeah, that's a good place to start right there, man, with the new guys. Obviously, college football, just the last couple of years, it's a little bit different. You sort of just have to expect that there's going to be some roster kind of rotation in terms of guys leaving. Obviously, with this group, you had a bunch of seniors anyway that are off to, hopefully play at the NFL level. And so I know you said that that's a little bit kind of later on this week, but so far, what has it been like just kind of starting to get to know the new group? I know every year is a little bit different in that sense.
Yeah. So I always commend Lonnie. Brings in great guys. Definitely very selective with who he brings in. And the guys that he brought in this year are great. Just like the guys that he brought in last year. Nick and Boaz and RJ and all them guys that came in are great. They're great men. They handle themselves correctly in the weight room, off the field, on the field, everything. So I have no bones to pick with any of them. And I'm very impressed with how they've conducted themselves. And I think they'll be a really, really big help to our offensive line with taking the next step from last year. Because everybody, it's never great to see a good team or a great team take a step back the next season. Nobody wants to see that. So you got to find guys that'll help uphold the standard. And the standard in our room is being upheld by those guys right now. Now we haven't had a football practice or anything like that, obviously. So I don't know how these guys play. I've watched a little bit of tape, but that's about it. But they seem like great guys. They are great guys, and they seem like great football players to me. So I don't think there'll be any lull in talent or play style from any of us, obviously, because I don't think Lonnie would allow that.
When you think or talk about the next step for this offensive line, I know last offseason, there was a lot of talk about, the line staying on campus for May. A lot of you guys just kind of taking it personally that you wanted to kind of be a part of taking a big step forward as an offensive line. What do you believe as a guy who's now, you're starting to be an upperclassman now, like you've been here for a while, you've developed on and off the field. What do you think is next? Yeah, there you go. What do you think is the next step, man, as a guy who maybe has started to become a veteran of this group?
I think that building off the momentum of last year, we didn't finish how we wanted, but I think we played well as an offensive line in that game. We can always obviously play better, but know that we are near what we want to be and that it's actually attainable, right? So like, it's not something you look at on a PowerPoint presentation and we want to be this, we want to be tough, we want to be resilient. Like, we rolled out there and we actually did it this year for a lot of the games. And I think that showed a lot of the guys in the room that we can actually be what we want to be and be what we say we are. And we want to be the most physical, the toughest offensive line in the nation. And I think that's attainable this year because we have glimpsed what we can be, and we're in a position to take that next step to be who we say we are next year. I think that keeping the momentum from this year is probably the most important thing. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So I hope that we stay in here during May. I'd be glad to be here with my guys training. No other place I'd rather be. I have nothing to do at home anyway. You know what I mean? Like, I can go see my family for a little bit, but I'd rather be here improving my craft because it's my job, and it's my job to, do well for your fans, obviously for our fans, and do well for myself, do well for my teammates, do well for Lonnie, my family, etc. So, and that's the same for all the other guys, is that they're trying to make a living in the sport and they're trying to get to the next level. Well, this is how you do it. You know what I mean? We've demonstrated that the extra work that we do in the preseason allows us to win more games in the season. So I think that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We need to keep the same mindset as we did last year and keep building on and the legacy that the seniors left this year.
Kason, you've mentioned Lonnie Teasley, your O-line coach, a couple of times. Just following recruiting here myself, I don't know if I've ever seen a better guy at just maybe connecting with high school prospects and getting highly recruited guys on campus. You're around him every day. What is it about Coach Teasley, just in your eyes, that he's able to connect with players so well?
I think he understands what we go through every day because he was an offensive lineman his entire life, and then he went into coaching offensive line. And I think that provides an interesting perspective for him to kind of put himself in our shoes when it comes to, you know, what we do every day, stuff like that, where other coaches cannot because they played other positions or whatever. They're not, offensive line isn't their main focus, but it's always been, you know, Teasley's main thing is offensive line. And he's a down to earth guy. I mean, work respects work. He's a very respectful guy, very down to earth, great guy, loving family man, all the things you want in a coach. He has them, and I absolutely love playing for him. And I would not want to play for anybody else in the country than Lonnie. And I think all of his players feel the same way. That's why he is so successful at recruiting every year. That's why he retains a lot of his good players that stay. And guys want to come back and play for him. Guys don't want to declare early for the draft. Like, old guys want to come back and play another season for Lonnie, play with the guys, like, because he creates a culture of love. Like, the offensive line actually hangs out. Like, I know that's not something that happens at other schools a lot, is that we all hang out together all the time, and that it's a family environment, and that allows us to play together better. And I think that Lonnie does a really good job of cultivating that and bringing people into the room that help elevate that standard.
You mentioned earlier Yemi Rodriguez, the nutritionist, and I think he took over there, I guess maybe 2 years ago now. He's been there a couple seasons now, 2 or 3. And so will you give maybe the fans a little more insight on that, just how, for one, important the nutrition aspect is, and just, you know, to be an SEC offensive lineman, the level of, I guess, mass that you guys have to not just gain, but just keep on. Like, I imagine the amount of protein you have to eat on a day-to-day basis is astronomical. So what does that look like for an offensive lineman at the SEC level?
So Yemi's fantastic. He's completely changed our program and their outlook when it comes to nutrition. I think that he's actually a very large part of why we were so successful this season. He won us a lot of those games because him and the strength staff together, because, you know, we were in shape and we were mitigating injuries to the best of our ability because we were eating right, we were training right, etc. And we were able to last longer than the other team in a lot of those games, those close games where, you know, it comes down to a last drive, it comes down to a last play, etc. We were able to get it done because we fueled our bodies correctly. We had trained that kind of scenario, and it wasn't new to us. You know what I mean? Like, we were prepared, mentally prepared, physically prepared for everything. And I think that he has taken it upon himself to completely change the program, which I think he has. People respect him. People do what he says. There's no, you know, there's no backlash with like, he works with us. You know what I mean? It's not like he's in there like, eat this, or, you know, you're not gonna succeed, or whatever. Like, he works with you. You know, he's a great down to earth guy. He understands what we go through. I know he played professional baseball for a while, so he gets the grind of the sport. Etc. But yeah, as me personally, as an offensive lineman, I'm trying to gain weight right now, so I got to eat a gram of protein for every pound of body weight that I weigh. So that's probably about 315 grams. I try to get 315 grams of protein a day, which isn't terrible if you mix in shakes. I think the key is mixing in shakes, and because you'd never get that with just whole foods, so it's impossible to eat that much. To get that much protein. And I try to eat around 5,500 calories a day or something like that. I have an app. Well, actually, Yemi has set up an app for us where we can track our meals, which I didn't have before he got here. But that's another example of him trying to change the program, is that we have an application now on our phones where we can track meals. We can input the food that we eat, and it calculates calories, protein, everything, so we can keep track of what we eat every day, where it's down to a science and not a guessing game.
So I know people that track their calories at home. It's more they're tracking, trying like not to go over a certain number, or trying to lose weight. For you guys, it's more how can I most efficiently get these calories, be it with shakes, and I imagine lots of chicken breasts and stuff like that, because it's just, like you said, near impossible.
Yeah, lose fat and build muscle. Build lean mass and lose fat weight is our greatest goal, because we want to look good, and when you look good, you play good, and we want to be efficient. We want to be good movers, and, you know, overweight people can't get it done on the football field in the SEC. It's just not. It's not what you want to be, and you see it time and again, like the best movers in the NFL are some of the most athletic offensive linemen, and they have lower body fat, and they're, ripped guys. And you want to be like that when you play offensive line.
Yeah, for sure. All right, guys, we got to take a quick break. We're going to continue this conversation right there, though, with Case and Henry here on the Gamecock Club Hour. it's like a Western, basically, like very, very violent. It's from like the 1800s, but
It sounds like my alley.
check it out. I just have a feeling that you would like it, so you have to check that out, man.
I'll do it
let's,
today.
yeah, let's see. So if you're not having chicken breast and those protein shakes from Yummy, what are you eating when you can just actually eat what you want? Like kind of a favorite meal. Is there anything that's kind of your go-to?
I like there's this place called Fresh Pokey downtown that has poke bowls. I don't know if anybody knows what those are, but they're kind of like Moe's bowls, but more Japanese. And that's kind of my go-to spot. I go there every weekend. I'll get healthy, but it's, my go-to because, it's still like within how I want to eat, but it's also tastes really, really good. So I recommend if you like poke bowls or Moe's or anything like that, it's more of a more Japanese Moe's, but I do recommend Fresh Pokey. I go there. Service is great every time. But yeah, that's definitely my favorite place to go to, I'd say, in Columbia.
Yeah, for those listening, it's kind of like sushi in a bowl almost. You can kind of pick whatever you want. I've been there, man. It's really good, really good. Let's see what else we got here. Hey, so since this is the Gamecock Club Hour, what has it meant to you, Kaysen, to kind of have the Gamecock fan support? Be it just like NIL with Gamecock Club and Garnet Trust, or just being out there at these fan events and stuff, man?
Yeah, well, I love meeting all y'all, and we just had an autograph signing at the basketball game, and it's great to see everybody's faces and talk to everybody. Fist bump all the kids and everything. Like I love seeing people come out to support because we love having y'all there. Y'all make everything possible. Y'all make the atmospheres lively, like everything. Y'all rush the field when we win, like it's great, and y'all are a very integral part to everything that we do at the university. And we can't, I can't appreciate you enough. We can't appreciate you enough. So keep showing up and keep showing out, and we'll do our best to win games for you this year.
And final couple things here, Casey, we'll let you get back to it. But you were talking earlier about guys wanting to stay in this program, and I think it was pretty fascinating. You look, I mean, everybody's going to have transfers out, but in terms of, for the most part, compared to a lot of other programs, most of the core guys from this past season that still had eligibility left, of course, wanted to stick around for another season. So just maybe you don't have to speak for your teammates, but speaking for yourself, what is it about what Coach Beamer and Coach Teasley and just everybody over there is doing that makes you want to kind of stick around, as opposed to wanting to be someone that went out and explored the portal, which is obviously always an option for college football players these days?
Yeah. I think we were one of the best teams in the country at player retention this year, if I'm not wrong. But there's a reason for that. And I think it's really the family atmosphere is what it comes down to here. And I know that sounds, a little bit cheesy or whatever, like, a little bit like I'm just giving you coach speak, but it really is true. We really are family in the locker room and around the building. I get more hellos, high fives, fist bumps, how you doings, like, than I've got anywhere else in the building every day. And people know your name, people know your story, people's names, people's stories, and everybody is basically related in the building because we all, bleed and sweat and cry and everything, experience everything together throughout the whole year. And I spend more time with the guys in the building than I do my actual biological family. So, you kind of get to know those guys on a very, very personal level. And I think that's what helps us play together well is, what the guy next to you is about, what he's been through, what he's fighting for. And if you know that, the inner outer workings of his mind and stuff, you can play harder for the guy next to you because he's your brother. You know what I mean? And I think that's really the whole atmosphere that we have at Carolina is family atmosphere, brotherhood. And I think that keeps people locked in. And I think that, the development at the university is second to none with the coaching staff that we have and everything. So I think that people see that and they put those two things together. I have a brotherhood here and I have great coaching staff to develop me. Why would I want to leave and try my luck somewhere else if I'm, especially like the guys that play that are older guys? Why would I leave? And especially if I'm playing, why would I leave to go try my luck somewhere else if I have it so good here. And if I'm in such a good spot to develop and build relationships that will last the rest of my life, I think anybody that's a logical person would say that it's just not worth it to go out in the portal and try your luck when you have such a good setup at this university.
Yeah, for sure, man. Are we officially counting down the days yet to that opener? I mean, I gotta imagine you're a Georgia guy, man. Is that one going to be a little bit special?
Yes.
Playing at Mercedes-Benz.
I'm incredibly excited. I played in Mercedes-Benz in high school for the Corky Kell stuff, and I'm very excited to get back in that arena, that stadium. It should be really fun. First team meeting back from the break. Coach Beamer told us how many days until we had to play Virginia Tech. So it's written down and it's circled. So we're not working for nothing. You know what I mean?
Yep, the countdown is on. Kason, we'll let you get back to what you were doing, man. Like I said in the open, though, we certainly appreciate you taking the time here. We appreciate the Gamecock Club Hour for kind of being our host here as well. And like I said, man, we appreciate it. We'll be pulling for you, and we'll talk to you soon, okay?
Yeah, thanks, Wes. Thanks for having me. Go Gamecocks.
107.5 The Game.
In Columbia.
100.5 The Game.
In Florence.
100.3 The Game.
In Myrtle Beach. The Game Network.
Have you been wanting to play some golf while not freezing your tail off? How about playing 9 in perfect climate-controlled conditions where you can also win some dough? Well, sign up for the first annual Pro Swing Golf Classic. It's a 3-day event, January 30th through February 1st. $150 to register a 2-man team. Bookings are available 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Food from Bonefish Grill included. You can win $1,000 for first place, $750 for second, and $500 for third. Plus, we'll be drawing Gamecocks baseball tickets that someone could win by just registering. Call Pro Swing at 803-528-1617.
This is Boomer Esiason with the Sports Minute, sponsored by TGL, presented by SoFi. Tune in every week for TGL matches. Time to lower the boom on Yeti Holdings. The Austin-based outdoor products company, famous for coolers, refused to share its trademark name with the NHL's Utah Hockey Club, which hope to become the Utah Yetis. Instead, they'll be the Mammoth, Wasatch, or Utah Hockey Club, not nearly as good. I was actually hoping for the Blizzard. I'm Boomer Esiason.
Welcome to TGL, presented by SoFi, golf's newest league, live on ESPN and ESPN Plus. It's 2 hours of hammer-dropping, overtime forcing, playoffs on the line golf, Tiger, Rory, and more. The best from the PGA Tour, split into 6 teams. Learn more at TGLGolf.com. Tune in every week for TGL matches. Keep up, it's golf.
All right, when it comes to getting life insurance for your family, a lot of excuses can get in the way. But ask yourself this: if something were to happen to me, who would pay the mortgage, the kids' education, and the other bills? Then forget the excuses and check out Ethos Life, the online, easy way to get life insurance in 10 minutes. Ethos.
Just $189.
I actually like them better than my old 5,000.
All right, welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyler Head, we're broadcasting live out at Pro Swing in Forest Acres, 4708 Forest Drive for the first annual Pro Swing Golf Classic as things are getting rolling out here. Again, we're going to be broadcasting all day here, the 107.5 Game Crew going until 6 o'clock. So Weston Chris will jump here with me in a couple of minutes for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, then me and Terry from 12 to 3, and of course Jay and Elijah for the post-game show from 3 until 6. I'm watching Chris and Josh on one of the simulators over here. And I've never pretended to be the world's greatest golfer. I do know you're not supposed to hit it where the trees are, which Josh and Chris seem to be struggling with as of right now. Josh, were you plus 18 through 6? Is that what you told me a minute ago? We're off to the hottest start, it didn't sound like. So we're, oh, there you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, I figured my approach is like, why shoot a 52 through 18 when I could just do it through 6?
Yeah, why not? You can set a record in the other way.
My best round was a 3 over.
Okay.
On the first hole. Now we're on Pebble, just shooting.
Yeah, you're just messing around.
Yeah, so
yeah,
it's been great. Come out. Say
yeah, exactly. Cool place out here. Again, we'll be broadcasting all day long. We'll talk plenty about it as the day goes along. Appreciate Case and Henry for that sit down interview with Wes that you heard a little bit earlier on in the Gamecock Club Hour. And look, I know a lot of people when the name Case and Henry comes up, we talk about his performance on the offensive line, particularly this last season, and we're not going to shy away from it. It wasn't great. The offensive line as a whole had their ups and downs, and particularly when we look at those tackle spots occupied by Case and Henry and Josiah Thompson, that is where the biggest concerns came in. Now, look, those are the two toughest spots in the offensive line to play, particularly the left tackle spot, which Josiah Thompson played, because you're dealing with those guys, coming off the edge, and you did have two guys in Henry and Thompson that, could have been better, certainly. Now, when you think about it, obviously Josiah Thompson coming in as a true freshman this past season, nobody expected him to go out there and suddenly be first team All-American or something along those lines. Well, if I go back a week or so ago, I think he got named to maybe second team All Freshman SEC or first team or something like that at the left tackle spot. Now there's not a whole lot of freshman left tackles out there, or I think he may have been in the entire country actually. But there's not a whole lot of those freshmen playing that spot because how difficult it is. So, you kind of knew with him, it was going to be a learning process, right? That he wasn't going to come in and set the world on fire, that, if anything, use that year to learn to hopefully make 2025 better. You look at a guy like Caden Proctor at Alabama, who went from kind of a liability on their offensive line in his freshman year to being one of the best guys on their O-line, in his second season. You hope that's certainly going to be the case for a guy like Josiah Thompson. Case and Henry is kind of similar in a way in that he had been on the roster for several years. I mean, I go back to when we were doing the In the Bonus show with Colin Taylor back when he worked at Gamecock Central, and he was the world's biggest, Case and Henry fan, the leader of the Case and Henry fan club, going into the 2023 season. And Cason did start that first game against North Carolina and got hurt after like 4 snaps or something like that. Did not get very far into the season and was out for basically the rest of the year. So, this past year was his first time truly being a regular starter. So while not his freshman year, his first year where he was actually playing all the games or playing multiple games, to be able to get out there and really see what he was made of. And again, it wasn't the best. I mean, both those guys gave up the most pressures on the team. They both gave up an equal amount of sacks with 6. So you certainly hope that's going to be better. In case Henry talked about it with Wes, that a lot of the spring for him is going to be focusing on those fundamentals, working on his hands, working on his feet, just getting back to the basics of that position. And again, when you're in the SEC especially, you're going to be going up against some nasty pass rushers coming off that edge. So if you're not fundamentally sound, they're going to eat you alive. And again, your hope is if these guys end up being your tackles once again next year, your hope is that another offseason of development, another offseason of spring practice, another offseason to play the spring game, again, all these kind of things is going to help them start off next year a whole lot further ahead than where they started off this past year, which again, naturally you think that would be the case just given the fact that you now have a full seasons worth of games, under your belt. And knock on wood, those guys are relatively healthy this past season. Hopefully that continues to be the case through 2025 as well. And we'll get into this a little bit more to start off the next hour with Wes and Chris. But the offensive line is so wide open in terms of who's going to be filling what spots, because again, you're replacing basically the entire interior of your offensive line with guys that you lost this past offseason, with Sean Lee, obviously, going pro, Torrey Sully Simpkins, all that. You think you'd have the consistency at the tackle spot. And we assume it's going to be Josiah Thompson at left tackle again, but we don't know that. It's an open competition. Coach Beamer talks about, how much of an open competition it is for every spot, especially when we talk about bringing in transfers. And South Carolina has gone out and added guys in the transfer portal to fill in some gaps on the offensive line and open things up. And, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to come in and start on the O-line. You had a guy in, Aaron Parks last year that came in and wasn't able to find the field, at the on offensive line despite coming in from Oklahoma. So it's not a guarantee. But you look at guys like a Boaz Stanley, who comes in from Troy. He had 7 starts at the center spot last year. Also started 5 games at right tackle too. So he's somebody that has a diverse skill set on the offensive line, because that's something we have to remember with the O-line. It is it's not so simple to just go from one position to the next. The skills you have at center are the difference than the skills you have at guard, and the skills you have at guard are different than the skills you have at tackle. So being interchangeable on the offensive line is not necessarily an easy thing. So a guy like Boaz Stanley, while the leading thought is that he's going to come in and occupy that spot that Rashawn Lee's leaving behind at the center position, he could very easily end up potentially being the right tackle as well. Again, it's going to boil down to who gives you the best opportunity, who gives you the best option in terms of crafting a starting 5 that we talked about, that continuity, right? You didn't have it in 2023 because of injuries. Who can give you that best starting 5 that you don't have to mess with, that gives you the best opportunity to block, to protect, all those kind of things that are so important. And this is something we're going to be following throughout the entire offseason. It's truly going to be one of the big headlines, or not big headlines, but one of the big stories we're following as we get closer to the start of the 2025 season, is what does that offensive line starting 5 end up looking like? And it may be different through spring. It may be different through fall camp. And, when Wes and Chris and everybody gets to go out there and observe the depth chart drills, as we like to talk about, one of the things we're going to be focusing on is, okay, who's that starting 5? Who are they thinking is the option to go to begin the season? And again, it's something that you hope you nail down leading up to the season, to where you're not having to rotate through those first couple games because, somebody's not working out at right guard, or somebody's not working out at left tackle, or whatever it may be, because you want that continuity. Again, going back to the 2023 season, when you didn't have continuity, you had injuries and all that kind of stuff. You were, it took 9-10 games before we finally got the same offensive line starting in back-to-back weeks. That's a nightmare scenario, which is what you want to avoid. But when you look at all the options, and again, we'll get Weston and Chris to expand on this a little bit more, because they've seen these guys a little bit more up close and personal than a lot of us for practice and stuff like that. But you got Thompson at left tackle. Tree Babalade, he's still on the roster. Don't forget about him. Jatavius Shivers still there as well, somebody that can factor in. Marquis Anderson, we need to move on to the interior, somebody that Wes, Chris, and a lot of people have been very high on what his skill set is. Dealt with some injuries last year that prevented him from maybe trying to see the field. I mentioned when you talk about the center spot, it seems like Boaz Stanley is kind of the leading candidate there to replace Rashawn Lee. But again, maybe he's the better fit at right tackle, given the fact that he's started there before as well. So we'll see what happens there. Again, Trevon Ball, who's made starts for South Carolina as a true freshman. You bring in Nick Sharp from Wake Forest, who's got a lot of experience, as well as Rodney Newsome from Western Kentucky as well, to compete for those guard spots. And then again, Cason Henry out at right tackle. Stanley had a few starts there when he was at Troy as well. And then Jatavius Shivers has the option of being that kind of guy out there as well. So again, a lot of interesting things to follow this offseason on what they ultimately end up doing when it comes to the offensive line for 2025. But as we know, because again, we've seen some bad ones, if you don't have a good offensive line, then the rest of your offense is going to suffer because of it. So we'll see what happens there. Again, we'll get some more thoughts on this as we open up the 11 o'clock hour. We're broadcasting live out at Pro Swing on Forest Drive. We're going to be here all day long, going up until 6 o'clock for the first annual Pro Swing Golf Classic on your Thursday here in the game.
Just allow me to tell you about our friends over at Classic Roofing. Check out more information today, classicroofingsc.com. If you go to that website, you can set up a free estimate where they'll come out and take a look at your roof and make sure you're not having any issues. Of course, taking good care of your roof, it can be challenging. You do not have to do it alone. With their years of expertise, Classic Roofing is the go-to residential and commercial roofing company for home and business owners in and around the Columbia, South Carolina area. Again, that website is classicroofingsc.com. The phone number 803-590-7870. Go ahead, get that peace of mind. Set up a free estimate today with our friends over at Classic Roofing.
For Thursday morning, welcome in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Todd West Chris again broadcasting live here at Pro Swing in Forest Acres, 4708 Forest Drive for the first annual Pro Swing Golf Classic. Things are getting rolling here, getting broadcasting live all day. Chris, I was watching you and Josh. Hopefully you fared a little bit better than Josh in terms of keeping it out of the tree line. How do we do?
Well, I did not most of the time, but I will say, by probably sheer luck, I did hit precisely exactly one decent shot.
Okay.
And
Chris is
I'm
being
leading.
modest. He's closest to the pin right
I was
now. is what
closest
he's
to
about to tell
So
you.
right now we're doing this par 3. It's a really difficult hole.
Yep.
It's like near the
True or
water.
false,
bunch of
Josh?
bunkers.
It's true.
True.
Okay, there you
Josh
go.
is.
I was getting a look from off air.
Yeah, he's had more attempts than me. Most of mine were really bad, but I did hit one good one. So that's where we are right now. Wes is gonna get on there later, maybe. We'll
Okay.
see. Yeah, see how he does.
Josh isn't sweating yet. I'm sure that's coming.
He ain't hitting drives. Though.
Hitting drives, yeah.
His drives
I guess so.
exert more energy.
Josh was pouring sweat last time we were here. But again, hanging out here for the first annual Pro Swing Golf Classic. Hopefully we'll see a lot of you guys out here. We got tickets to give away. We got T-shirts. If you're heading out or just want to swing by. In fact, if you come by and you compliment Josh on his golf game, he will give you tickets to Sunday's women's basketball game against Auburn. You can see the Asia Wilson jersey retirement. You just have to tell him how good of a job he's doing.
So we're rewarding liars.
Yeah,
now.
Yeah, well, at least for today. We got to help with self-esteem. You know what I mean?
There you go.
Got to build them up. Plenty to get to over this hour. I talked about it a little bit, wrapping up the last hour there, but West Course sitting down with Case and Henry in the Gamecock Club Hour, talking about a number of things. And look, like I said, when people hear the name Case and Henry, we obviously know he had struggles this past season. But as I said, kind of similar to Josiah Thompson, first true season as a starter. He'd been on campus for several years, injured, obviously, didn't really get a chance to get anything flowing as far as continuity. So last year was his opportunity to really get out there and learn a lot, hopefully. And he was talking about focusing on the fundamentals this offseason to where if he is once again that right tackle, you hope he's taking big steps forward in 2025.
Yeah, I think offensive line, like you said, I mean, the word continuity, experience, just getting older, more physically mature, getting stronger. You heard Kaysen say, basically he's still trying to add that good weight and put himself in a position. I thought it was interesting too, listening to kind of some of the underlying focuses that I guess the O-line as a group had this past season and how that related to injuries and, trying to be a little bit more fit group. It sounded like if you read between the lines and trying to, obviously, as we talked about kind of about this time last year, but a little bit forward in time, how they all stayed on campus in May, even though that's kind of your last real opportunity, frankly, to actually get a little bit of time off if you're a college football player. So for them to go out there and sort of show how important it was to them, I do think mattered. I think fans in general, every school in the country, have a little bit outsized expectations for their offensive line. Like it is not easy in this league. And, I think you can see though South Carolina made progress this past season. Kaysen himself even mentioned, hey, we had Lenoris erase some sacks for us. So I think that's worth acknowledging. You do have an eraser there in terms of, Dow Loggins used to talk about Spencer making him right in terms of play calls more in the passing game. But Lenoris is a guy who can make you right in that you don't have to have the perfect play call on. You don't have to have the perfect protection either in how you physically execute it or in what is called, because that guy can make you right. But would you like to see them continue? I mean, Kaysen did not shy away. They want to take the next step as an offensive line. And I think a lot of that is based around, yes, you have to replace a bunch of guys, but you have a lot of players coming back who have experience. Me personally, I would like to see this be the year you see, Babalade find a role. You see Troy Ball maybe step into a starting lineup. You see some of these young, what we have been calling like core high school recruits, continue to step into bigger roles.
Yeah, it was very interesting too that Shane Beamer singled out the offensive line this offseason. He said basically that he was asked about position groups, things of that nature, offseason priorities, and he said it's time for this offensive line to take a step forward. And so you can tell it's on his radar. Every position group's on your radar to improve, but it's on his mind a little bit more. I think something important to keep in mind when we're talking about tackles specifically. I mean, you had a couple guys last season in Casey Henry at right tackle and Josiah Thompson at left tackle. This is their first season starting. I mean, Kaysen had played a little bit before, but that was the big storyline going in is just he had been injured so much. So for all intents and purposes, that was really his first playing time. Like he started the UNC game in 2023. He played about 4 or 5 snaps and got rolled up on and went down with an injury. So this is his first really meaningful starting experience. So he wasn't a freshman, right, physically, but is a guy that still young, still inexperienced, still coming off injuries. So it's kind of a year one for him. Josiah Thompson, literally a true freshman. Hey, here's one of the top 5, top 10 at worst schedules in the country. Go out there and block. I mean, how many first-round picks and NFL guys did he and Casey Henry have to go out and block? And that's part of it. Like, at the end of the day, you got a job to do. That's part of the job. But you do have to have the perspective and the context of these guys are young. Josiah Thompson's got to get bigger, stronger, more experienced. Casey Henry, same thing. Going through those fires and those trials, I think will help them some, but they do have to take a step forward. And then I think it's what you said, Wes. I mean, you're going in, who's going to win the guard spots? That's fascinating because you've got some guys that come in through the portal last year. A couple portal guys won those 2 guard spots. Will that be the case this year, or will it be a combo, or will it be those guys are just depth and it's guys like Troy Ball who end up being the guy? And you're also looking for a new starting center. So who is that? So some very interesting questions for this group with a lot of eyes on this group too.
And you go back to what you said a moment ago where, Beamer talked about the emphasis on the offensive line this offseason. And, look, Coach Beamer's been at Georgia. He's been at Oklahoma, places that had very successful offensive lines in his time there. And obviously when in the SEC and talking about those great defensive players, especially on the defensive lines that you're going to be going up against, the importance of building a strong offensive line. That's been an emphasis that Beamer's had since he's been here when it comes to recruiting. People talk about the Great Wall of Carolina. You've brought in a lot of these high-level recruits going out there, finding these guys in the transfer portal. And unfortunately, these past couple of years, you just haven't seen it translate over the exact way you wanted to. Now, this past year was obviously better than 23 was, and 23 was obviously a lot of struggles having to do with injuries and stuff like that. But you're still waiting for that wow, phenomenal offensive line year. You go back and look in Beamer's 4 years, they've never finished in the top half of the league in sacks allowed. They're usually giving up 30, 35 sacks a year. This past year until Sellers started, making magic happen, they were towards the very bottom because he was getting sacked left and right. So you're just kind of waiting for that year where the offensive line lives up to the billing that so many people have wanted to put on it, through the way you've recruited and everything.
Yeah, and I think they took steps forward this past year. Now, I don't normally try to read too much into coaches' comments, but when Beamer made those comments about the offensive line stepping forward, I took that to very specifically kind of be talking about these, what we've been calling the younger guys who will now sort of, frankly, not be young anymore. And you brought in this competition. I'm sure Nick Sharp, RJ Newsome, Boaz Stanley, they're all 3 coming in to start. Like, I'm sure that's their plans. Yep. They come in here to start. And this past season, you saw the interior guys they brought in. Now, it wasn't immediate. It wasn't in terms of when they first got here. Now, it was immediate in terms of once you started getting into the season. But this time last year, they're fighting it out with the guys that were already here. So I think in a perfect world, this time, guys, maybe you get a little split between some of the transfer guys are starting, but then some of your returning guys on the interior are starting. And, I think center is an interesting position in that you do see guys play true center and you just say, hey, this guy's a center. That's his spot. That's what he plays. And I think with Boaz Stanley, even though there is some position versatility we've seen at his prior stop in terms of SEC level, probably is a true center like that. Even if you look at his PFF stuff, his performance, his production, his grading went way up once he slid to just playing center. And so I think he's going to obviously compete there. But what does the rest of that position look like? Can Ryan Brubaker make another step forward at center? Do you get a look at at a Marquis Anderson potential? That was something very early on when Marquis was signed. The talk about him was basically, is he probably a tackle? No. But is there some versatility here just in terms of his athleticism where he's a guy who could play multiple spots across the offensive line? That was part of the discussion about him. So I wonder. Now, a lot of that will be determined by what happens when they start doing these kind of football days right now here soon. And then, of course, when you get into real spring practice, who performs, what gets the best 5 guys on the field. But that position versatility, we can talk about it. We can put mock lineups together. But ultimately, it's going to be about who performs and then how do you kind of move guys around. Who gives you that little bit of versatility where you say, hey, if I slide this guy one spot over, that gets our best 5 on the field. So I do think this is a huge offseason for, I won't quite put the guys who were freshmen this past season in this category. Like there's still time, if you're talking about a Cam Pringle, a Blake Franks. This is a huge offseason for Tree Babalade, for Tro Ball, for the guys in that group, for Marquis Anderson, in that you want to start to kind of take claim, you would say, to more snaps.
Does Tro Ball get a look at center? You remember, I think it was his true freshman season. He snapped in practice some, and it was more of like, I don't know if he was out there playing it live, but to your point about getting the best 5 on the field, like, does he get a look? Because that's been my question. We know Stanley's probably getting a look at center. Brubaker, who went in for a snap or two against Clemson when Rashawn Lee had to come off the field. But my question is, who are the other guys? Like that's I don't have the answer to that yet. Marquis Anderson seems to be a good fit, as you mentioned, but is Ball one of those guys? And maybe that's just an emergency situation, a reserve. Maybe they look at him and say, hey, he's a guard, which is where he's played his past 2 seasons as well. But I think that's one of the little small things we're going to, won't be small, but one of the little things that maybe go a little bit undervalued for fans going into spring practice. When we get out there, we can walk around, see a little bit. Who's out there snapping on the side? Who's out there as the second, the third team guy at center? Heck, who's first team at center for starters? I'm going to have my eye on that for sure.
Yeah, and again, that's going to be a story going to be firing the entire offseason to see who that starting 5 is by the time the Virginia Tech game rolls around coming up at the end of August. A little bit of a slower week in terms of football, but the Reese's Senior Bowl happening this weekend. Practice been going on out in Mobile, and a couple Gamecocks representing on the defensive side of the football. We hear from one of them coming up next and talk about how they've been doing out there so far and their draft potential coming up here in a couple months. Again, we're broadcasting live here at Pro Swing out in Forest Acres for the first annual Pro Swing Golf Classic. Our entire 107.5 game crew going to be out here all day long. Come by and see us. Again, you can get some tickets to go see the women's basketball game on Sunday against Auburn. Get a T-shirt as well. And again, just hang out and have a good time here at Pro Swing in Forest Drive. It's Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game.
just hearing some teams, tell me that I'm, just a top, 30, 15 talent in this draft.
Okay.
Could be a starter in this league for a long time, could play as long as I want. Just hearing that belief and confidence that they're installing in me, just makes me believe in myself more and more.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris along with you here on your Thursday live out of Pro Swing on Forest Drive here for the first annual Pro Swing Golf Classic. It is time to flip the card over and check the stats. Brought to you by friends over at Palmetto Cards in Lexington. That was the voice, by the way, of TJ Sanders out at the Reese's Senior Bowl, talking about the conversations he's had with some pro teams out there so far this week. And of course, this past season, another successful year for TJ Sanders. When you look, 51 total tackles, 29 of those being solos, 1 pass deflection, and 4 sacks, which is only half sack shy of his season high of 4.5 from the 2023 season. So he ends his South Carolina career with 9.5 total sacks. But of course, when you talk about the interior of the defensive line, it's not always what shows up on the stat sheet that really matters. It's the other things being able to affect the quarterback. Obviously, what you do in the run game as well, that TJ Sanders is so well known for. And as he mentioned in that clip there, being talked about with teams as being a top 30 pick, even in some instances, according to teams, a top 15 pick, which, you can't find too many mock drafts with having him this high, but you have one team that falls in love with you and thinks you're valuable of going that high, they might take you there.
Well, I think it also depends on what you value as an organization. Obviously, some of this is about need. Do you need a defensive lineman? Do you need an interior guy? And then what does your scheme look like? So I do think there are probably some very particular teams that are looking for his specific skill set. And I think with TJ, what you're seeing is not out of character in that probably people who haven't maybe taken as in-depth of a look at him are now seeing him up close at the Senior Bowl and are going, okay, man, this guy just flashes big-time potential. And, we saw TJ obviously grow a ton in terms of his on-field production during his time at South Carolina. But he's one of those guys that initially started kind of flashing in practice from fairly early on when he arrived. It was the size speed combination was apparent. And I think the thing about TJ Sanders is that there is actually still even more upside to go here. So if you're looking for a completely finished product, then, I don't know if he's your guy. If you're looking for someone where you're saying, man, we can keep developing, keep tweaking what this guy does already, then you're probably pretty interested in him. I think he weighed 284 at the Senior Bowl. So, a lot of this to me, again, is going to come down to scheme fit. And I think TJ is one of those guys that will be very hard to predict how high he will go in the draft, because I think everybody wants athletic defensive linemen, but to me, it's got to be a particular team, and they've got to be willing, obviously, to say, hey, we'll spend a first or second round pick on you. Is he more of a defensive end in a 3-4 scheme? Is he a 3 technique in a 4-man front scheme that places a huge emphasis on athleticism and maybe doesn't necessarily care that you're not 300 pounds? I think those are the things that will determine how high TJ Sanders goes. But of course, teams are going to love the athleticism, the athletic upside here.
There's somebody on Twitter that, that clip of TJ Sanders going speed to power against, I think that was Dellinger from LSU, who was a very good player.
Yep.
They won the Moore Award, right?
Yep.
They had a bunch of dudes, and we saw those battles play out throughout that game on the field, and that was fun to watch. But he had a great rep that was getting passed around Twitter, and one of the draft analysts is like, the Gamecock defense from last year is like my favorite ever because they had so many interesting players. And, TJ's one of those guys. It started in drills. People are like, wow, look at this dude move, at 284 pounds. And then the one-on-one started, and he's went out there winning, every rep. I agree with you, Wes. He's got a lot of upside to go. He is an interesting player in that he's not like okay, this is absolutely, a 3 technique defensive tackle. This is absolutely a 4-3 end. There's some versatility in there, and that's going to take some teams going, okay, we think he fits in what we want to do. And there's still potential there, but he's also got on-field production. This isn't one of those guys that you just say, okay, wow, he looks great in this, practice setting, but he doesn't really have much tape. Why did he not put it on tape? He's put it on tape too. And it really started, remember when Carolina played Georgia last season, 2023, and he wrecked shop in that game. And I talked to some people around
2 sacks in that game.
I talked to some people around Georgia, and they were like, who is that guy? And then he kept it going this year, had another really good season. So he is, there's been some question as far as on the South Carolina defense, who's going to go highest. And I think we probably all thought Nicky, Kyle Kennard, probably your top 2, in some order. But TJ, could he be someone that puts his name in that conversation if he keeps this up?
Yeah, I think for me, that just depends on, is there that proper fit where a team is looking for that specific skill set and has that need. And if so, he could easily, I think, jump those guys even. I mean, that's the thing about the draft. We get caught up in, all right, what's the order? Who's ranked the highest in the draft? And you may even say, well, this guy got drafted higher. That means he's a better player. Really, it's about what the teams think and what their needs are and where their picks actually, what picks they possess. So I think for really all these guys for Carolina, there's a ton of just athletic upside. The traits you talk about that NFL teams look for, they all have it. I mean, where's Demetrius Knight on this board before it's all over with? Like, he is going to blow teams away when they have their in-person meetings with him. Then he's going to run a crazy time at what you would say is probably prototypical linebacker size in today's world. So, I mean, all these guys, frankly, have a chance to move up, I think.
Yeah, and look, they've all made impacts. Again, you mentioned the T.J. Sanders, a clip of him going at bowling over the LSU guard from yesterday. I'm reading this thing from a Raiders site about how impressed they were with Demetrius Knight and just how hard he was hitting in practice. The D1 speed leaders from day one. Cal Kennard was in the top 5 there. So all these guys making an impact to some degree out there at the Senior Bowl, again, in front of a lot of NFL scouts and representatives from those teams to kind of make one last impression before you go to the combine here in a couple months and ultimately the draft.
Yeah, and Senior Bowl, honestly, is like the other bowls are great, but Senior Bowl is kind of the top one. So if you can go out there and impress at this one, then you're going to have all the NFL teams watching you. I think they do a pretty good job on social media too. Senior Bowl does of putting out information and keeping people apprised of what's going on and who is standing out. And so, you go back, obviously it didn't quite turn out the way we thought in terms of where he was drafted, but this time last year, Spencer Rattler was one of the talks of the Senior Bowl. And,
won MVP.
Yeah, I think that put him, in a position, at least at the time, where you thought it was going to raise his stock and just showing he could run an NFL scheme, an NFL offense, something a lot of college guys are not asked to do, was big for him at the time. So, and I'll say this, the games are fine. The games are cool, but really, much like you see kind of when guys are going from high school to college, the game itself, in my opinion, maybe isn't necessarily where you make your money. You make your money in these practice settings when you have every NFL team in the world out there watching you, watching your every move, watching your body language, watching how you react to success, watching how you react to failure, and, of course, seeing you compete one-on-one with some of the best, basically, in your class.
And that Senior Bowl is a Saturday at 2:30 on the NFL Network if you want to check out those guys representing South Carolina's defense and see how they do in front of those NFL scouts. Again, broadcasting live here at Pro Swing for the first annual Pro Swing Golf Classic. And again, things gotten rolling here. And I think Josh is getting better is what he's telling us. And we'll get his update here in the break here. Coming up next, we'll hit a make your case now the college football season has ended. What coach, now that Ryan Day has a national championship, has the most to prove in 2025? With that coming up next, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Thursday here on the game.
All right, everyone. 11:30 here on the game, and that means it's lunchtime. You already know where we're going to recommend Firehouse Subs. 15 different locations all around the Midlands, no matter where you are in the Midlands. The good news is there's a Firehouse Subs close to you. I think I might still be full from our live show recently, right down the road from where we are right now at Forest Drive. That's one of the 15 locations. If you haven't had the new French dip sub, you got to check it out. Premium carved roast beef, caramelized onions, 2 different kinds of cheese, all in the hot toasted Firehouse Subs roll with au jus sauce for dipping. They've got that, but they've also got all of your Firehouse Subs favorites. So go check them out. Use the Rapid Rescue to go. You can avoid the wait, order online, walk in, walk right out, get your delicious Firehouse Subs. FirehouseSubs.com, or use the Firehouse Subs app to earn yourself some rewards toward future purchases. Firehouse Subs.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, Wes, and Chris along with you here. We are out at Pro Swing in Forest Acres watching Wes do some long drives here. As Josh did inform us in the break, he got within 2 feet this last time. That's what he was trying to signal to us a moment ago. So we're improving, which, hey, this is the perfect place to improve your golf game. Instead of spending a ton of money and going out on the course in nasty weather or whatever, come here, got a simulator, the ball rolls back to you. It's nice and, temperature controlled in here. You got food, drinks, the whole 9 yards.
Got everything you need. We got
Oh, that one's going in the water. Not quite. Almost.
4 bays. Yeah, like you said, everything you need. And the thing I really like, not that it helps my golf game until I can come and play some more.
Sure.
You know, you hit a shot and it kind of shows you the view of, how did you strike the ball?
Yep.
If you hit a really good shot, you'll even get, they just showed this view of Josh, like you can see your complete swing and everything. So really cool stuff. Of course, they've got the, what they have 15 TVs in here, Tyler, I think.
I've lost count.
Of course,
Yeah.
everywhere you
There's-
turn.
that you
Kinda
can't-
like
you can't miss
Firehouse
it.
Subs, like there's
Yeah,
like
you-
15 TVs.
you can't
like,
miss it.
Everywhere you are in Pro Swing, there's a TV. Got the 98-incher right behind our heads here. So this is an awesome spot.
How's it going, Wes? How's your driving session?
Don't want to talk about it.
That little spray chart you got going on there. You're painting the entire
Yeah, if I was a
painting the entire course.
basketball player, you'd say I had a diverse game there. Hitting from all areas.
Don't think it quite works the same way in golf. Now that we've wrapped up the 2024-2025 college football season, obviously Ryan Day winning the national championship with the Ohio State Buckeyes leads us to today's edition of Make Your Case. There it is. Now that Ryan Day has won the national championship, which college football head coach is now under the most pressure to get it done?
I was really hoping that you were going to, you previewed this during the break or going into the break. I thought you were going to give us some multiple choice.
You can choose whoever you want.
Wes, do you have anybody immediately on your mind?
I do.
Okay. Do you want to go then?
I do.
Go for it.
I think there's a couple of different guys, but first to mind was Mike Norvell.
Ooh, that's a good one.
I mean,
now we're talking about winning the national championship here.
Oh, but you said most to prove.
No, in most to prove in terms of coach that's expected to win the national championship.
Okay,
that changes the equation.
Changes the equation.
Because again, Ryan Day's biggest knock was you've had all this talent, have these great teams, you can't win the title with them. Finally did it. Okay, that's over with. But in terms of who's that next coach that we're now saying, okay, now the pressure's on you to be the next one to win it.
I had two that came into my mind. I see you Googling, Wes. So Alabama did come to mind. Now, Kalen DeBoer, both for performance this year, having the season they had, that's a pretty good season. That's not good enough at Alabama.
Right.
It's definitely not good enough to repeat. You don't want that over the course of a few years, which is kind of crazy, but that's the way it is at Bama. I don't know. Here's what gives me pause on that. I don't know if Bama fans want a national title in year 2, but they certainly expect more than they got.
Should at least make the playoff. That's the expectation every year.
So I would put them in that category. The other one that came to mind was Sark at Texas because of how they've really, that roster's very loaded. They did make the playoff. Our fans going to be pounding the table for a national championship. Those are two that really came to my mind. I think you can make a pretty good case for Bama, and DeBoer was under some heat because of whatever he wore, the performance of the team.
They were losing because he wore T-shirts.
Kind of working this out on real time. I don't know if he's the number one answer, but
I got an answer.
All right.
And national title that's a little extreme.
Okay.
But I will say fits very much in the category of a coach who has been extremely successful at their current school, but the fans are now saying, give me a little bit more. I need more. I want more. It's Lane Kiffin.
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, the reactions after they got beat by Florida this year were basically, hey, Lane's great at giving you an advantage if you don't have as much talent. Lane is great at, playing the spoiler, but we had too much talent to lose to the Florida Gators
in Kentucky.
Yes. And so I think when you spend all that money on the NIL front and you give a guy all these resources, they they had a playoff roster last year.
Oh.
There's no doubt in my mind.
1000%.
If Ole Miss had made the playoff, then I don't know what the odds would have been for them to win it, but they would have been my sleeper pick to win the whole thing. They had the talent, honestly, across the board to win the entire thing, and they didn't even make the playoffs. So I do. I mean, you look at what Lane has done at Ole Miss, starting out. So we know Ole Miss has been a struggling program over the years. Starting out 5-5 his first year, that was COVID year anyway. Then he wins 10. He has 10 wins, 8 wins, 11 wins, 10 wins over the 4 seasons past that. So in no real world would you say Lane Kiffin should be in any trouble whatsoever in terms of people liking the job he's done. However, as we know in athletics, when you start to set people's expectations of, oh, you're going to average 10 wins a season, which is essentially what he's done, then they say, well, can you give me a little bit more? When are we going to make the playoff? We got an expanded playoff. Why can't you make the expanded playoff? So I think there will be a fairly decent level of pressure on Kiffin. Fair. I'm not saying it's fair. I'm just saying the reality of it because of people sit there and watch these the transfer portal. They say, man, they've put a lot of NIL resources into this. There's another top transfer portal class coming in, and people expect it to immediately result in wins, which it has, but they're going to want a little more.
I go James Franklin at Penn State. I mean, we talk about the 12-team playoff being almost tailor-made for a guy like him because if this would have existed in the past 10 years, Penn State would have made it just about every single year with him there because they were consistently good, but not better than Ohio State and Michigan and stuff like that. Well, they make the playoff this year, and we're a couple plays away from making it to the national championship and rematching with Ohio State. And again, Franklin is a coach that can routinely win you 10 to 11 games every single year, which again is going to be good enough. And you get semifinals this year, which is great. But I think when you look at what next year means, you get Drew Aller back, who took a big step this past year. You get K. Charnell and Nicholas Singleton back, both your running backs. You're going to need to go out there and find some pass catchers at receiver. You're losing Tyler Warren, the tight end, which was a big part of your offense. Got some key guys coming back on defense. You just went out and spent a ton of money to bring in Jim Knowles, your defensive coordinator. It feels like this is kind of that all-in type of year for Penn State. And look, they're always going to recruit well. They're always going to have good transfer portal talent, but it seems like 25 is kind of the year that you zero in and say, okay, if they're going to win, if they're going to get over that hump, this seems like the year that's finally going to happen. And I think James Franklin is going to have that pressure on him throughout the entire year.
Yeah, I do think that's a really good pick because I think you always have to put it, to answer this question, you have to consider what type of pressure cooker is that coach in. Like at Bama, right? There's more pressure at Bama than there is at, say, in my opinion, like Oregon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, could you throw Dan Lanning in the conversation? He's going into year 4. Yeah, they made the playoff this past year, but they got beat pretty handily. They've recruited extremely well in terms of NIL and resources. There aren't many schools, if any, that are positioned better than them. But who would you say has more pressure? Kalen DeBoer in year 2 or Dan Lanning in year 4? I still say probably DeBoer, right?
Yeah,
Just
I think
because
so.
you're in more of a pressure cooker. Franklin's in one, maybe not to the extent of Bama, but he has not been able to shake the big game type of thing.
Yeah, and he's been a head coach for a very long time. Like
yeah.
Lanning, again, going into year 4, this past year, took a step forward. He won the Big Ten. They obviously made the playoff. Didn't go the way you wanted to, but you were the undefeated #1 team going in. So that's a step forward from what you did a year ago. But again, Franklin's been at the helm for Penn State and Vanderbilt before that for a long time. And now he's on the cusp. He just needs to get over that hump, obviously, and we'll see if he's able to do that in 2025. We'll come back and wrap up today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. The final 24/7 rankings are out for the 2025 class. Where did future Gamecocks fall in that? With that coming up next, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Thursday on the Game. Welcome back in. It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West, Chris, along with you here on your Thursday on the game. Again, out here at Pro Swing in Forest Acres for the first annual Pro Swing Golf Classic. Watching everybody take their swings and watching our guy Josh slowly improve as the morning goes along, which, hey, that's what this place for, to improve your golf game and not have to spend a ton of money, a ton of time out on the course and nasty weather or anything like that. So having a good time out here, and appreciate everybody here at Pro Swing, the Integrated Media, for having us out once again. Yesterday, 24/7 Sports put out their final top 247 rankings of all the recruits for the 2025 class. And as you go down this list, you got a fairly solid number of representatives from South Carolina's 2025 class, headlined by Donovan Darden, the 4-star edge, coming in at number 106.
Yeah, 4-star linebacker for South Carolina.
Linebacker.
And that's one of the big discussions for him is, will he ultimately end up at edge or will he play linebacker for South Carolina? And, On3 coming out with their final rankings today. Rivals, I think, did theirs earlier this week too. So you're seeing all the major recruiting media sites put out their final take on the 2025 class, which, as we know, most of them are already on campus. So it's just interesting how the timing of these things continues to shift. But Darden, probably you would safely say, is your biggest riser of kind of everybody in this class. And we saw that earlier with On3 moving him up in one of the past sort of recruiting updates to 122. 24/7 has him at 106 now, and we'll see what On3, they're putting out their final ones today. We'll see where the final ranking is for Darden.
And what goes into making the final official ranking on these guys? Because, again, they've been fought throughout their entire high school careers, through games, through camps, and all this kind of stuff. What's so significant about coming to that final conclusion on these guys?
Senior year film, for one. I mean, you talk about the fact you're trying to follow hundreds of prospects, so it does take time to sift through all that senior film that's out there. A lot of times guys will maybe put out their final highlights at the end of the year, so that gives the evaluators an opportunity to go ahead and look through. And really, all-star games, honestly, if you're talking about, can you maybe give those final little tweaks? If you're a top 20 guy, then you hope at this point your top 20 guys are pretty solidified, but maybe there's a conversation of who within that top 20, top 25 should move up or down. Who maybe goes to a national all-star game and just shows out and says, look, I'm playing against the best of the best, and I look like a 5-star guy. And then your local all-star games for guys like Darden, just going and playing well at the Shrine Bowl and showing he can move in space. He had a pick 6 in the game, and that was a big thing for him. He kind of fits your Havelock, North Carolina style, where these guys are typically underrated. Then by the end, they're in a position where a lot of times they've been able to move up. And that was the case. You go all the way back. Pharaoh Cooper was a 4-star by the end of the thing. Darden now going to be a 4-star by the end of the thing. And I think you look at kind of his maturity, both from a physical and mental standpoint, and throwing the athleticism, throwing that he's now shown he can play in space, which is something you obviously have to do at linebacker. And this, I think, raises the expectation a little bit for what he could possibly do as a true freshman at South Carolina at the linebacker position.
Yeah, you look at Darden, and I mean, he's one of the most physically impressive guys in the class. I like this test. If you brought him in here and said, hey, this is South Carolina junior linebacker Donovan Darden, you'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, I can buy that. Like, he looks very physically developed. He's got a very unique skill set, and he does things that guys that are his size really shouldn't be able to do. I mean, I was watching his film. Kevin Miller and I from Gamecock Central did a film review on Darden the other day, and you watch Havelock, and Havelock is lining him up at tight end and doing tight end end arounds with Donovan Darden. It's like, how do you even, so he just athletically, he can do so much for you. And I think you're right, Wes. Like, you just look at it seems like every time this happens with Havelock guys, we should just go ahead and have them ranked high to begin with, because they're eventually going to blow up. Went out to the Shrine Bowl, put on a great performance there. So somebody that's really risen, in the rankings throughout the process, and well deserved, because I think he's a really good prospect.
Yeah, and when you kind of look at these other guys, and we can kind of expand on them a little bit more coming back tomorrow, and kind of look at where they fall in these other rankings. Malik Clark at 108, Donovan Murphy at 160, Cedric Sherrod at 209, and then Kennard Enns coming in at the very end at 246. 4-star safety, South Carolina. So good representation across the board. Again, this is just one outlet when it comes to our final rankings. We'll kind of see what the other ones kind of end up looking like. But again, we talk about a 2025 class that a lot of people are excited about. It kind of backs it up when you see so many of those guys represented here.
Yeah, if you go to the On3 industry comparison, you can actually see a comparison of where the final rankings are for all these guys, which I think is pretty fascinating. And not to be outdone, I know. So Charles Power, obviously, he likes to step out on a limb. It's On3 recruiting guy. Not to be outdone by 24/7's bump up. Darden has gone way up in the On3 rankings that just updated. Number 52 prospect in the entire 2025 class.
With some more of those numbers coming up tomorrow to see what these guys ended up in the final rankings for the 2025 class. That'll do it for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, live out at Pro Swing halftime show with myself, Terry Ford. Up next on your Thursday here in the game.